Hi, my name is Susan Doyle from Box Media and I'll be your moderator today. I would like to welcome you to Lean Construction Ireland's 21st webinar, the topic of which is why is the return on investment from lean construction training so compelling? If you have a question, please type it in the question box and we will consolidate and ask Joe and Aidan in the second half of the webinar. If there are any questions that we don't get answered during the webinar, we will follow up by email afterwards. The agenda will be as follows: opening introduction by Gary Widger, presentation by Joe O'Callaghan from Leading Edge Group and Aidan O'Dwyer from DPS, followed by questions and answers. I will now hand you over to Gary.
Thanks, Susan. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Gary Widger from Lean Construction Ireland. So this afternoon, we're delighted to present today's webinar in partnership with Box Media. Today's session is why is the ROI from lean construction training so compelling? And our speaker today is Joe O'Callaghan from Leading Edge. Joe has over 30 years hands-on experience at process improvement, including practical application of Lean and Six Sigma methodologies. Before his mentoring and training work, he had international responsibilities in leadership roles in many high technology organizations. He's also worked within production, engineering and service functions in a variety of management roles. Joe joined Leading Edge in 2005 as a senior lean consultant and has successfully leveraged his experience to support supply chain, manufacturing and service clients in lean tools and techniques across many sectors and regions. I now will pass you over to Joe to start the presentation.
Thank you, Gary. I'm delighted to be doing this. So I'm here in a room in the DPS engineering offices in Little Island in Cork, and I'm delighted to be here with Aidan O'Dwyer, and Aidan is the Director of Cork Operations for DPS, and we will be working as a kind of a tagged team as we work through the presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So I'd like, before getting a little introduction to DPS, to give a little overview of what it is that Aidan and I will be covering. So Aidan is going to introduce us first of all to the background to DPS and Lean and what they went through to get this Lean training. I am then going to describe some of the specific improvements that they have achieved and going to pay particular attention to two examples. There are many examples, but we're going to focus on two and explain each of those in the form of a case study. And then I'm going to hand over to Aidan to wrap it up and describe the journey from here on, because as you will hear from him later on, he considers the training merely to be the start of a never-ending journey. And finally, we'll be delighted to welcome questions and answers. So that's what we're about to hear. I think it's probably appropriate that we hand over to Aidan to take us through their thinking on Lean and what it does for their company.
So why lean thinking? I suppose if I go back to the famous quote by Albert Einstein, do the same thing the same way and expect different outcomes. He defined that as a definition of insanity. And we've all been on projects when we said this is going to be the dream project, the one that we're all going to write up about, and then afterwards you're kind of saying, how quickly can I get off this and get on to the next project? So it was against that kind of thinking that the team here in Cork sat down and said there must be a better way of doing it. And having been introduced in DPS through another affiliate on lean thinking, our ATG group, we embarked in conjunction with Leading Edge on a training program here in Cork to try and achieve, goals. And those goals, as Joe has already inferred, it is that journey. And I think at the moment we're on the baby steps and we're just working our way along. But the objectives in doing that was to increase our lean capability. That's why we did the lean training. And to set up a network within the organization here in Cork that had qualified lean green belt practitioners looking at the cost and efficiency benefits for the Cork operation. And also, another objective was to put a structure, a governance in place to monitor those ideas and, you know, develop those ideas into fruitful programs of improvement and ensure that people are working on the right thing. To that end, we have set up kind of an annual award on all these lean initiatives, and at the end of each annual year we judge which is the best, and there is an annual award that goes out on that. But the fourth item, and it's very much linked to the first one on increased lean capability, it was to develop and empower people to drive change and to make improvements. And that's I would find very important with a view to personal development and the growth of that individual through their own career path. So why introducing lean thinking? You must set a goal, and for us, we kind of set a reasonably ambitious target of 250k in savings. Moreover than that, we noticed that more clients were requesting lean thinking and lean thinking methodologies, and as an office, we have secured projects purely on the principles that we were going to operate lean practices. So, as an example to that, as given in that slide deck, we secured a large project with MSD using the Last Planner tool as it's a tool for schedule certainty and predictable flow, and we practice that. We're very skilled practitioners and in that within DPS. And here in the Cork office, we've taken it as part of our standard execution. But also, as you see on the footer there, to deliver projects better, faster, and together, we have also gone out now and provided training to our clients and indeed to the local here. We did some workshops here with the Construction Industry Federation to actually, improve and educate people on some of these lean practices. So why lean education? Everybody at that point in time said, "Oh yeah, we're doing lean," and then when people didn't have that background that we have now secured through the Greenbelt training, we now understand the principles of it, and we can actually not only talk the talk, we can actually walk the walk, and that's very important. So the perception out there, and certainly with the training with the CIF, it says, when we presented out some of the practices we do, they stated, it looks very complicated and complex. And it does take effort. Nothing comes for free. But the benefits of actually being able to drive projects out to cost and to schedule and to execute within that project effectively and efficiently are very beneficial both to the organization and, as I repeat again, to the individual employees, and moreover to your end user, which is ultimately the customer. So the lack of common language and understanding of the next customer within construction, that's still a struggle. Sometimes within the construction team, they think that the next customer is the client, when in actual fact, it could be the guy sitting right beside you within your organization. And the integration of appropriate lean tools, Last Planner, target value design, BIM, A3 problem solving, 5S, which we've now gone to 6S, but we involve safety in that, and the make. So these are the areas now that they're no longer buzzwords. We understand the basis and structure behind them, and we're able to implement them within our projects. The business case for lean is overwhelming, and certainly as a person responsible for running the Cork operation, when one sees the statistics, they are more than compelling. The empirical evidence through Lean Construction Institute show obviously you're 3 times better if you operate a lean practices to achieve schedule, and you're 2 times better to achieve budget. And the statement to any party looking to go on this journey, they're powerful statements to make to a customer to secure work. So this was the driver that brought DPS Cork operations to actually embrace the whole lean Greenbelt application. So I'll hand back over to Joe now. I'll take you through the education and training.
So thank you, Aidan. So as Aidan described there's compelling reasons for why their company decided to go down this route. And we in the Leading Edge group were delighted when Aidan selected the Leading Edge group to undertake that training. So our company offered DPS a range of educational offers, starting with the white belt, which is a basic awareness which suits quite a lot of people because it takes a small amount of time and it gives them general awareness. So the key thing here is the yellow belt, then, as it's called, is a little bit longer, digs in a little bit more in detail on the tools and allows greater proficiency. However, the most serious training there is called a green belt training, and that takes place over 5 days. And Aidan, I'll just bring your mind back to you doing the green belt yourself. You were a participant on it, and it took place over 5 days. And I think my own sense of it is that it definitely achieves proficiency because you're expected to do a project as well as pass in exams. So it gives you the required certification as well, which I think for some of your clients was rather important. So that offering, those set of offerings from the Leading Edge Group have been developed in collaboration with other construction businesses. And there's a list of some of those there that's a non-exclusive list of companies, including Mercury, Winthrop, DPS, and Kirby. So the extent of the undertaking in DPS is that there were a total of 20 people put through the yellow belt, and so far there have been 17 put through the green belt program. And I was delighted just talking before this meeting, there's a further 8 to 10 people due to start another round of green belts shortly, which is a wonderful testimony as well. So the Greenbelt cohort from the company, they included people from a range of the departments within DPS. And this was something I was particularly impressed with because it gives a great cross-functional representation to drive projects. If it were only from one particular department, I don't think the impact will be quite as impressive. So you can see the various departments listed there. It covers a wide spread of departments. If I move on to give you a taster of some of the examples, obviously each of the people, each of the 17 people that did the Greenbelt needed to do a particular project. So there's just a sprinkle of some of the more common examples there, 6 out of the 17 listed there. There are, of course, a lot more. We're going to dig in detail on the first 2, so I won't explain that a little bit more for now. But if I start at point number 3, trying to make sure that design deliverables are actually delivered and making sure that customers are satisfied with that was one of the projects. Driving the margin on particular projects executed here in the Cork office was another. Developing a standard operating approach for brownfield projects was another one. And the final one that's listed in there was trying to reduce the amount of repeated modeling effort associated with the use of Revit 3D. And each of those were very impressive projects. And I guess for now, what I would like to do is to focus on those first 2 there in a little bit more detail, so as to give you a sense of what those involve. And before I dig into each of these 2, you will notice a degree of consistency in terms of the approach here. This is a characteristic of the Greenbelt, that people are taught a particular methodology or approach that will result in projects having a kind of consistent feel to them. So the scope of the project, the first one that we're talking about there, is to reduce the amount of defects at the end of a job. The company refers to that as a punch list, or sometimes I find other companies talk about it as a snag list. And the idea here is, of course, if you finish a job with less punch list items on it, that's a greater efficiency, it gives greater time and cost savings for both the company and indeed the client. frustrations and stress levels are dramatically reduced, and it gives a competitive advantage, which has proven itself in wins for the company already. So a very important aspect of all Greenbelt projects is a requirement to quantify what are the key metrics that will be impacted on. So there were two specific targets, one on the left and one on the right. And the intent there was to get one punch list item out of every 25,000 euros worth of contract work. And that target represented an 18% improvement over what the current practice was. The closeout rate relates to the time to complete addressing those issues, and the intent there was to go from 16 days down to 12, and that represents a 25% gain. So that's, those were the kind of targets, if you will. The methodology, which was followed in all of these projects and proved to be very effective, was a true lean construction tool called DMAIC, and that stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control. It is, for all intents and purposes, it's like a project management methodology for driving improvement projects. So that's just reminded there. One of the tools that was used early on in this particular project was a particular tool called Voice of the Customer. And this is a relatively straightforward tool where the project member, the Greenbelt project person here, undertook interaction with the customer to understand how punch lists came about, the pain involved, and the benefits from reducing those punch list items. The next thing that the team of people working together to drive this improvement completed was another tool called a SIPOC diagram. And the purpose of the SIPOC diagram was for a shared, consistent understanding by the full team in what needed to be tackled. Often I find that with improvements, not everyone understands the full extent of what needs to be improved, what are the inputs, what are the outputs, and who is affected by each, for example. So this tool was very well used by the team. On the next slide, you can see some of the other tools that were used by the team. On the left is a classic process flowchart, which is a brilliant tool, in my experience, for examining what happens in processes. By the team using this very simple tool, they can step through how processes are undertaken, what are the decision points, where are the difficulties and delays, and in effect, the non-value add sneaking into the process. On the right-hand side is one of the other fantastic lean tools called a fishbone diagram. And a fishbone diagram is a very simple team-based tool to help understand the causes of problems. So it's a very good tool to engage. And if I could pick up on a word that Aidan used at the start, he talked about empowering employees. This is a fantastic tool to make sure that each of the employees participating in the team has their voice heard and their perspective is acknowledged. So those are some of those brilliant tools there. So to cut a story short, the team worked through those tools, followed the DMAIC process, and came out of it with an agreement on the key metrics, came up with a set of steps that sharpened the focus on avoiding defects, just avoiding them happen at all, which of course is effectively a right first time ethos. And I think, as has been mentioned already, coming up with a scheme for recognizing those contractors that are really putting this into practice. The tangible benefits are specified there in terms of schedule. The duration of the construction cycle was shaved by 5.2 weeks, and the cost savings in total from practicing this amounted to a whopping 650,000 euros to the client. I think you will all agree those are very impressive numbers. So the next case study I would like to talk about is actually one that Aidan himself worked on, and this targeted something that I can imagine happens to every construction company, and it is where you are responding to quotation requests and developing a proposal. And in the company, Aidan and his team and senior team here recognized that that was not streamlined. It didn't have a consistent process, and there were opportunities. So the team put together and led by Aidan came up with some specific targets there to reduce the cost to the company of preparing one of those proposals. And the aim was to get to a shaving of 10 to 15% on what was costing roughly 7,000 euros. So that's a fairly impressive target. So again, the team adopted this DMAIC approach, which worked very well. Some of the tools that were used in that project are shown in this diagram here. On the top left is a tool called a RACI matrix or a RACI chart. And this is a very useful tool to help identify who is responsible for each of the tasks and who are the other stakeholders for each of the tasks. On the right-hand side is a structured tool to help you understand who needs to be communicated with and how frequently for this project to be achieved. So those are tools, standard tools, but used particularly well in this instance. The other thing that the team, and you can see a very nice photograph here on the right of the team as they're doing the work, it looks in the image there, it looks like they were working through a process flowchart of it, and they were trying to understand what was really essential to customers here. And there's a little excerpt on the left showing a review of what was really critical to quality in the eyes of the customer. So these are standard tools, easy standard tools that are taught as part of the green belt. So again, that was quite a successful project arising from it. There now is a standard generic schedule for each proposal and a drop-down menu of topics which are already pre-approved and don't need to be reworked each time. The tangible benefits out of it is that to spin a proposal now takes 5 days less than before. And in terms of the absolute costs associated with those have been reduced on the first two projects for which I've seen numbers reporting a 9% reduction and a 13% reduction. So, Aidan, if I could ask you just to comment on the last one, you were updating me on the news about that one, that's continued. You've continued improving on that. You mentioned.
Yeah. So what we've done is we've taken the structures and seek to enhance limit costs, smaller scale projects and larger scale proposals, and structure the responses and structure those in a cost-effective way. So we go through a formal process now of evaluating the RFQ and which way we would approach it.
Good. So take it on here, so Aidan, please. So the overall impact to DPS there.
Yeah. So it was there was a total savings of 360 over all of the projects. Compliance has improved. There's increased customer satisfaction. There is a reduction of rework and deliverables and design. Better synergies between the departments as well, which is very important. You know, it's been another direct benefit. I think across the disciplines working within projects, there's a greater degree of empowerment now at the green belts, which we only have 17, and I say only 17 in the organisation at the moment. There is an ambition to address an ambition. There is a drive to put more in place, so that there will be green belts resident, more than one in each of the project executions, to embed the philosophies and principles of what we're trying to achieve. Obviously, there's an increased win rate. Clients do see that we're not just talking the talk of lean, but we're walking the walk, and that's very important. And it's more and we're more competitive in the EPCMP delivery, because we, not only in the construction space, but obviously in the engineering space as well. So there's just a photograph of yours truly and 7 other of my colleagues. We were I suppose, Joe's initial 8 guinea pigs who actually took up the Greenbelt program. I would like to emphasize it and repeat again that the point that Joe made was that it's very important that the Greenbelts are trained across the organization. It's not a top-down implementation, and it's not a bottom-up implementation. It has to be across the whole organization, because the message has to be permeated throughout the organization for it to be successful. At the moment, for us, we have sought again with Leading Edge to roll out further Greenbelt training programs, and as I would have said, we would view, while we're sitting here making this presentation, we're probably just presenting the start of our journey as opposed to the end of it. And I think for us, in consultation with other initiatives we take with companies like Leading Edge, there'll be step improvements along the way where we would seek to leverage off Greenbelt, or even go deeper into that program to enhance our overall performance. So the overview of the lean construction in Ireland, I don't know if I'll pass that back.
So I think this is our opportunity to pass back to Gary and Susan. So thank you again. So I think you're going to lead us in the questions section. So.
Thanks, Joe and Aidan. It's Gary here. So look, firstly, thanks very much for, I really enjoyed the way we got straight into to real case examples. So there's a number of questions in here. I think maybe this may be, probably for Aidan first. So the question is, how did DPS Engineering select the projects to focus on when they proceeded with the lean construction Greenbelt training?
So probably, this is my 3rd time using the word, but empowerment is key to the whole process, I would see. So literally, what I may see as an improvement at my level in the organization and at someone else's level in the organization may be entirely different. So in actual fact, we left it open to the parties who took the Greenbelt training to take on the original Greenbelt initiatives themselves. So for some people, it's to do with a specific engineering activity that just isn't cutting it for them. For me, removed from that, I would say, well, I'm more interested in more accurate forecasting or more efficient proposals. But to actually, to walk it and to let people know that they could actually influence the structures and changes within an organization, I would recommend that you let the individuals on the training course self-select what they want to change. And that gets you your early wins, which is a point that we haven't probably raised yet. You do need a couple of early wins in the program to actually embed the philosophy. And we've achieved those here, and I don't think we would have achieved them if we had kind of, I use the word, forced a program or a case study onto somebody as part of their exam.
Thanks very much, Aidan. And just one follow-on question from that. How wide-ranging were the projects? Because we saw one which was obviously focused on the punch list, the other was on proposals. Like the span or width across the organisation, was it a wide range?
Yeah, it was. So literally from, there's some people in accounts have actually since done a Greenbelt training program, totally like we're presenting ourselves as an engineering company, but like any company, we do have an accounts department, and for them there was issues around the accounts. So literally, it was totally wide ranging, and in the areas that they wanted to work in. So we didn't limit it in any shape or form. And generally, I would have said the party would have picked the item that maybe, I won't say upset him most, or him or her most, or that they thought could change or improve most. So the accounting case study was done purely on the retrieval of data and invoicing to improve the turnaround of invoicing for cash flow purposes, which is the ultimate benefit for a company. If you can reduce improve your invoicing turnaround, it obviously reduces your time waiting for payment. And so that party looked at that program, analysed it from a point of view of what was the typical times on that turnaround, and sought to put a system in place to improve it. And that's been done and implemented and already within our packages. So really, there is no, it really was carte blanche. People could do what they want. And again, I'd really emphasize to kind of get it embedded into here. People need to see that they can influence in an organization and they can change it for the better. And that to me would be key.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Aidan. I think empowerment is the phrase for today's webinar.
Yeah.
So a follow-on question, and it's possibly for both DPS and Joe. Is the lean construction green belt training and associated project hard to do? Also in with respect to balancing the day job.
I'll answer that if you don't mind. Yes, of course it is. You have to make a commitment to it. But if you analyze, if one analyzes their time and they're really wanting to make that change, you'll find the time to do it. It doesn't. The green belt is not just sitting down there and saying, listening to Joe, if you pardon me, for a half a day or for the day, and then getting the certificate. You have to work the program. There is a written exam, and there is a case study to be done as well. So from that end, there's work involved. The only thing I could probably say to people is, you'll get out of it more than what you'll put into it, would be my definition of it. Certainly from the 17 green belts and DPS that have kind of gone down that program, I think all of us have achieved a lot out of it. And to be honest with you, it's kind of even as you can see when Joe referred to the case study, even to writing a report or an argument or whatever it is, or a proposition to change, there's a structure to it. And that gives people a lot of discipline. And it is I'd say to people, the green belt is not rocket science. It's a heavy dose of common sense and a lot of clever tools to make you think a lot more clearly. So when you're muddled and thinking about all the multiple things that you have to do tomorrow because you're sitting in the training model, the fishbone and the side pock allow you to put structure on it. And I'm speaking as an engineer, structure is kind of what it's about, and therefore it allows you very clearly analyze the current situation, look at the empirical data, make the change, and then monitor that change for its improvement. And have the courage to say that if it hasn't really worked out, to go back and revisit it, redefine it again, and go again. And they're all the items that you would learn under the green belt training. It does take 5 days, so certainly the one thing with Leading Edge that encouraged us was we can't take the 5 days off consecutively. So what we did was we took 1 day a week over 5 weeks, and therefore, you can keep control of your day job. To answer your question very, very succinctly, hopefully, that you can configure it with some of the consultants, that they'll be very flexible to the fact that you're making a big time commitment. Because 5 days or a full working week for, let's say, 10 to 12 people is a lot to take out of an organization.
Okay, very, very good. Thanks, Aidan. One more question. So, how would you suggest or believe a company should best start adopting lean?
I would suggest any company, no matter what industry they're in, and I know we're talking here about the construction industry, and that most of the people on the call are all construction related. Any company, no matter what realm or business you're in, has the ability to improve. And I think from my point of view, you just need to sit back and look at your current processes. And certainly, as I inferred earlier, getting the younger staff involved on it, who are not tarnished by 28 years of doing it the same old way, is a very key. It generates an awful lot of energy in the office, an awful lot of camaraderie, an awful lot of competition, and a drive to gain improvement. So literally would be, if you actually just did a workshop and said, this is how we do a proposal, this is how we invoice, this is how we handle our document control. It could be any main blockage that a party within the organization or parties within the organization feel they're not doing that. A simple workshop and a brainstorming would be the first thing, and you don't need any training to do that. You just got to sit and say, okay, why is it so complicated? Why does it take us 5 days when it should only take 2? And just brainstorm it out. And if you bring 10 people together with no more skill set than brainstorming and say, what do we get out of that? You'll actually find that you'll get a generation of ideas that will allow you to say, it's right, this could be changed and improved. And we were doing quite a lot of that, but what we were failing to do was actually looking to say, how will we actually then restructure it, to define it, measure it, analyze it, improve it, and control it, as in the make. And that's what the Green Belt provided for us. So instead of having all this brainstorming, and sometimes maybe having the noisiest person in the room dominate the suggested fix, which may not be the right fix, what you're now doing is you're going back to empirical evidence to actually push it through and define exactly what's the best way of tackling the problem. And that to me would be a good starting point, is to kind of take a half day, pick a topic within an organization that's posing people a problem, brainstorm it among 3 or 4 or 5, 6 willing participants, put the ideas up on the board, reconfigure and say, well, what would be the ideas? And then maybe look at, and some of the stuff is on the internet anyway, look and say, well, what can we define it? Can we measure what the problem is? Can we analyze that measurement? Can we look at how we would improve it, and then go back and control it? And already on this module, we've covered the module of the make. I mean, Joe is not going to tell you much more than what you've just heard from myself on what the make is, but you'll kind of say to yourself, is that all what the Green Belt is? But there's a lot more tools around it to actually help you actually do each one of those letters, and that's the key or the trick to actually making it successful. So any company, any party on this call can organize their own brainstorming session and then say, how can we use the make as I've just defined it, and say, yeah, we can measure it, and we can analyze it, we can improve it, and then we can control it, and away you go, and you've got your first step of the Green Belt journey started.
Okay, very good, Aidan. There's just an expansion of that. It's a question in from Declan, and his question is there any point in embarking on a lean journey if the leadership team does not back it? In his experience, the top-down requirement is an essential.
Well, I suppose not going on an ego trip here. I am the top down. I am Green Belt trained, so I would have to say that yes, it has to be from the top down. Yeah, bottom up is all very well, but if you're just going to meet the roadblock, the energies that I just described in the previous statements will soon wither away, and then people will say, let's go back to the status quo. So I'm hoping that Joe will agree that in DPS, the energy is from the top down, but that's not just, so therefore I'm not putting that down to the success. The energy is also from the bottom up, and neither one is more important. But I would say that if you haven't got it from the top down, you're on a hiding to nothing.
I completely echo that view, and it is, Aidan, I know I'm here next, but it was one of the success factors. I think Aidan is a little modest here. It is one of the success factors. You don't get these case studies without the top brass recognize it and encourage it, which you've heard Aidan here. You can see he's an advocate for lean. So that's one of the enablers of the success.
Okay, guys, listen, just thank you very much. I think that's it. We had those 5 questions in, so I think that is probably a good area to wrap up the session. So Look, firstly, on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland, I'd like to thank Joe and Aidan firstly for being open to sharing their case study and their success story with us, and also to putting the time together to present it to the wider group. Our next webinar for Lean Construction will be taking place on the 26th of September, and it will be presented by Dennis Leonard of Graham Construction. We'll send out information shortly via LinkedIn and to our Lean Construction Ireland distribution list. A reminder, obviously, that a recording of this webinar of DPS and Leading Edge will be available on our website shortly. I'd also like to thank Box Media, our media and communication partner, for facilitating this webinar. So just once again, thanks to Joe and Aidan on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland. We really appreciate your time. To everybody who listened in today, you can follow Lean Construction Ireland on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and on our website. So have enjoy the rest of the day, be safe and be lean. Thank you.